Hello and welcome back to Steins Gate Zero. Okabe seems to have matured over the last 6 months since the events and trauma of the summer. Which, to be fair, he did go through a lot. And Okabe hasn't changed all that much since he is still making such good impressions on female researchers. I wonder if he'll seduce this one by talking about time travel too. It was nice to see Moeka is doing okay. I felt kind of bad for her because she was kind of manipulated, and I guess she still is being manipulated. But this time she didn't have to kill Mayuri, so that's good for her. But does she have a new target now? We ended last time before Professor Leskinin gave his presentation. So, let's see if there's some more time travel on the horizon. I could tell earlier by looking at the size of the crowd going inside, but it was a very high-energy crowd. The atmosphere was clearly different than Izaki's seminar, which was mostly students here for credit. The place was nearly full with a crowd of scientists and people who wanted to learn about cutting-edge technology. Mitochondria's researchers had published a slate of papers in Science recently, and had gotten a lot of media attention. Maybe this is why. Yeah, that's a hell of a medical publication, or a scientific publication name. Science. Were there any empty seats? Looks like it. I found a single empty seat at the edge. But when I looked at who was sitting next to me, I moaned. You again? Kiryu Moeka was there. She was speaking to no one, just typing mindlessly on her phone. I had once named her Shining Finger because of her incredible typing speed, and she was as fast as ever. Who was she talking to? Maybe she's just taking notes. She is a reporter. I didn't even want to imagine. I quickly turned away and looked for another seat. Dr. Leskinin reached the podium almost the exact instant I sat down. There was a huge wave of applause. But when they saw the tiny little girl come up next to him, the applause faded into confused murmurs. Maho must have expected this. Her expression didn't change in the slightest as she stood next to the professor. In fact, when she took the microphone from the professor and looked around the theater, she looked like she belonged there. Ladies and gentlemen, first Dr. Leskinin began talking in English. When he made eye contact with Maho, she began to interpret. Everyone, thank you for coming to my seminar. My name is Alexei Leskinin, and I am with Mitochondria University's Brain Science Institute. My specialty is brain signal processing systems and artificial intelligence theory.
And I am his assistant, Piaggio Mato. I am also a researcher at the Institute, working under the professor. I'm glad to meet you all. Yeah, you are under him by like 2 feet.
The audience started murmuring again. That was the same way I responded when I met her. Oh, that'll happen, yeah. I'd like to get right into it by introducing some of the cutting-edge research we are doing. The topic we're discussing today is the artificial intelligence revolution. But I think this system we're going to demonstrate today goes beyond anything you've ever imagined.
Dr. Leskinin stood in front of the laptop that had been placed on the podium and started to type.
This computer is linked to one of the supercomputers in our labs. Oh, don't turn on the projector just yet.
One of the staffers was about to display the laptop screen on the front projector. Some kind of important program must have been booting up.
Sorry, this stuff isn't complete yet. The screen is filled with programs that aren't pretty to look at. I'd rather let you see me naked than let you see these lousy programs. If there are any engineers in the audience today, you know what I'm talking about, right?
Some of the audience got the professor's joke and laughed.
While it's booting up, I'll go over the basic idea of the system.
There was another projector in the center of the stage. A diagram appeared on the screen. And at the top of the diagram was a Japanese translation for the general audience. An analysis of memory-related nerve impulses in the temporal lobe. I knew that title well. In fact, I was sure I could never forget it. It was the title of an essay written by a 17-year-old genius and published in Science. She had completely analyzed the nerve impulse patterns that govern human memory and used that to digitize the memories themselves into data. And she had used that to invent the time leap machine right in front of my eyes. Though none of that had actually happened anymore.
This paper appeared in Science, so I'm sure some of you have seen it before. This theory was proposed and finalized by a brilliant Japanese member of our team. Human memories are stored in the cerebral cortex, particularly the temporal lobe. They're a lot like flash memory. The part of the brain that reads and writes this flash memory is called the parahippocampal gyrus.
Dr. Leskinin pointed to the diagrams of the brain and the hippocampus on the screen.
The brain functions by sending electrical signals between cells called neurons. Memories are actually just the transmission of these electrical signals, and it's the parahippocampal gyrus that controls them. In other words, memories are created by passing electrical signals in and out of the parahippocampal gyrus. So, the Japanese scientist who wrote this paper came up with an idea. Electrical signals passing through the parahippocampal gyrus determine signal patterns, and the cerebral cortex Maho, are you okay?
Maho started to have trouble with her interpreting. She was getting confused. No matter how good you were with both languages, interpreting for a long period of time has to be difficult. I'd once read an article on the internet that said even a professional can't do it for more than 20 minutes. International conferences and live broadcasts from overseas were actually handled by a team of people switching off. Or maybe... was she having trouble because Krisu's name came up? Dr. Leskinin saw she was having trouble and cut himself off.
I'm sorry,
Miss McKeesey focused on the pattern of electrical signals going in and out of the parahippocampal gyrus. By analyzing the pattern, she was able to get complete data on which memory in the cerebral cortex it corresponded to.
They actually do have something like this. It's not that specific, but like it can, if someone's thinking of a pink triangle, it can pick that up type of thing.
yeah.
This created the basic theory that lets us take the vague, analog thing we call memories and turn it into a digital combination of electrical signals. The result was her paper, which was published in Science. And right now, our team is using that theory to create a system to turn a person's memories into digital data.
And send it through time back to the person a week ago. A wave of whispers swept across the theater. Yeah, we know she can do that because that's the basic function of the time leap machine. Which means
we can store and access a human's memories on a computer.
the whispers turned into a low roar. I see. So, even after her death, Kurusu's research was being carried on. Yeah, I guess this is 6 months later, so she might not have had it actually finished, and she finished it up while she was working with Okabe and stuff on the time leap machine. Of course, maybe it was natural that it would be. That was the basic theory for time leaping, which I had proved myself, even if I could never prove it to anyone else in the Alpha World line. My memories had been turned into data and stored on a computer. There was no doubt about that. And that Dr. Leskinin was talking about it right now was the basic technology required for that process.
There are two major projects we're working on right now. One uses this system for medical applications.
The slide on the projector changed.
This project is a joint effort with the Psychophysiology Lab. The idea is to use the hippocampal gyrus to put the memories stored on a computer back into the brain.
Incredible! Someone who looked like a grad student in the front row shouted. Dr. Leskinin didn't seem particularly put off by the interruption. Maho continued her interpretation.
Incredible, huh? I can understand how you feel. I would feel the same way in your position. But we feel this research is making real progress. How wonderful would it be if we could make this work? One example would be memory problems caused by aging or Alzheimer's. This would be a form of symptomatic therapy. We could automatically back up the patient's memories as data. Even if the patient loses their memories, they could go to their PC and reinstall them.
Yeah, but how do you know it's your original memories that are being reinstalled? Like, I could see some very evil uses for that technology.
Oh, yeah.
We think this would be a way to stop memory loss. In the end, we hope to make memory data stored on your PC constantly accessible via the hippocampal gyrus. This would mean that if brain functionality was lost, for example, if the brain was badly damaged or atrophied, brain functionality could still be maintained. It would be like a form of external storage.
A strange feeling gripped the hall. Part of it was shock, and the feeling that they were witnessing the announcement of incredible technology. Which, to be fair, it would be.
Oh, yeah.
I also like his MacBook doesn't have an apple on it. It looks like a crescent moon or a banana.
It's a banana. Banana book.
Part of it was skepticism that a system like this could ever actually work. Yeah, this is one of those cases of extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence.
Yeah.
Part of it was revulsion at the idea of playing around with the human brain like that. And excitement born of all these things passed from one member of the crowd to another. But yeah, this would be really big news if it's true, type of thing.
Absolutely.
Dr. Leskinin raised his hand to encourage questioners.
It looks like I need to take some questions before we move on to the next project. I'll answer anything I can. Go ahead.
Many hands were raised. I could tell that there was a wide range of people interested. Both young and old were raising their hands. This is also an evidence of Okabe can behave himself in a lecture, unlike when he was with Dr. Nakabashi.
Yeah.
Dr. Leskinin pointed to a questioner. This was the first question. Sampling would be required when initializing analog memories. Does that mean any information would be lost? The professor nodded as he listened to the question in Japanese and began to respond in English when the speaker finished. Maybe he was able to understand Japanese, if not speak it. Well, that's true. I wouldn't want to...
Well, that's always a possibility.
Yeah, I don't want to speak Japanese because A, my accent is terrible, and B, my vocabulary is not for polite society. To put your question another way, you're saying that when you save the live recording of an orchestra as a WAV file, it's impossible to record everything. That's a good question, and it's one of the biggest problems facing our research right now. Yeah, because it would take terabytes at least of data.
Yeah, at a conservative estimate.
Yeah.
If the network within the brain consisted simply of neurotransmitters turning on and off, that is, exchanging binary data, the problem would be simple.
That would be the exact same thing as a computer's digital data.
But we know that neurotransmitters and electrical signals form an analog network within the brain. The only way we have to deal with this problem right now is to sample at a higher rate. To continue our musical metaphor, instead of sampling at 44.1 kHz, we'd sample at 48 kHz, and instead of 48 kHz, we'd use 96 kHz. This allows us to recreate something very close to the original analog data.
Little by little, the mood in the room was turning to disappointment. People were beginning to wonder if this was just a pretty theory that wouldn't work in reality. More questions came. All of the questioners were skeptical of the professor's theory, and many of them seemed to be outright challenging him. Oh, that's kinda what happens when you present a thesis. Everyone tries to poke holes in it just because they want the best possible...
They want it to hold up.
Yeah. I started to get upset. This was Dr. Leskinin's research, but it was also Carisu's. I knew better than anyone that it worked, and the sight of so many people refusing to give it a chance infuriates me. No, this is exactly how the scientific process works. You try to poke holes in it, and where people do poke holes in it, you go and gather more data.
As anyone does with their findings.
Yeah.
Cruelty. It's just how things work.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just how you make things more sound.
Yeah. And it is something you have to get used to in academia, is people will question everything you try to put out. So
you don't not
just be ready for it. Yeah. Yeah, and you should question everything everyone else puts out too. Like, if you see a flaw in a theory, you should say, I see this flaw. And then the author will go, that is a flaw. I better go fix that or something. Or gather data on that specific anomaly. Like, sometimes there are edge cases where things are weird. For example, water does normally matter when it gets colder shrinks, but water between 0 and 4 degrees actually expands. It is just an oddity of water, but it goes against how the general theory, and you have to poke into that, and sometimes there's interesting things there. Are these people really scientists? Yes!
This is a thing, buddy. And you should know that, because you are trying to be a scientist.
I tried to keep myself under control and looked back towards the podium. Yeah, you don't present a theory unless you're ready to be questioned about it. Was she mad? She certainly looked disappointed. Dr. Leskinin was very polite with the rude questions, acknowledging the problems with the theory. She was very different. Her anger was starting to seep into her interpreting too. I felt a kind of kinship with her. Yeah, and like both Okabe and Maho are young, so they probably haven't garnered the thick skin you need to be presenting an art theory like this.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah, like when it's your first or second time, I guess. because everyone has to do a thesis defense to get a bachelor's. The question and answer session continues. Though in a bachelor's thesis defense, you aren't brutally questioned very often because you are not doing very boundary-pushing research.
Yeah, you're also brand new, though. They won't tear you apart quite as hard as they would a known colleague.
From a medical standpoint, this is just reckless. It's absolutely impossible to rewrite digital data back into the brain. It's insane. I read the essay in Science and I don't believe it. Especially since the lead author was a 17-year-old girl. That was the one thing I couldn't ignore.
Listen.
Objection! Well, he's back on,
He's back on his Trinity bullshit.
Yep. Or at least, Phoenix Wright.
What?
The two people on the stage and the entire audience all turned towards me at once. How do you know it won't work when you haven't even tried? That's a fair question. Like, how do you know if it won't work? Has anyone tried it?
Yeah, it kind of leans very close to ethical concerns. Like, you could very easily
Yes.
step into human experimentation with this kind of stuff.
Yes. But like if you like someone with Alzheimer's or something.
Yeah, you get a volunteer, but even so, like, there's a lot of people would think that was pushing too far. Because you could seriously hurt that volunteer.
Yes, there would be a lot of the ethics committee would be very closely watching this.
Very touch and go, yeah.
Yeah. There would be a lot of informed consent.
Yeah, I understand. Especially your memories, because that's such a core facet of who you are as a person.
Yeah. And the informed consent paperwork would be a book. The world is full of technologies that people never thought would work. But they exist now because people overcame those problems. Criticism alone doesn't help anything. Yeah, actually it does, like...
That's the scientific method, baby. You can tell he's very good.
Yeah.
And very emotionally invested.
Yes.
I think VNs like this are the most likely to be read by people who are actually scientists.
The whole theater was silent. Well, there are scientists like this, too. So, like, even in the people who read this in the scientific committee or community will go, yeah, he may, like, he pretends to be a mad scientist, but he is not graduated from any course. Like, he's in a bachelor's course, I think, but I don't think he's graduated, so he hasn't done the thesis defense or anything like that, so, like, he's not used to this kind of thing yet. But I didn't regret standing up. On the stage, Iajo Maho was staring at me in shock. And as for Dr. Leskinin, I saw a flash of white teeth as our eyes met. Awesome! He's really something! He started to applaud. Uh-huh? Why is he applauding? This is the complete opposite of the Okabe at the in the first Steins Gate.
Oh yeah.
Because now the scientist, after Okabe objects, is like, cool, dude.
Nice job!
That just makes things more embarrassing. And she's probably used to Leskinin being like this.
Awesome. He's really something, the professor says.
Yeah, making it absolutely clear that she does not think this. Maho translated the professor's words for me to hear.
But a scientist must remain calm at all times. The only time when you're allowed to yell is when your experiment succeeds and you say, "We did it."
That's all you need, he says.
I'm sorry. I lowered my head and sat down. I thought I was calm, but I guess I let my emotions get away from me. I hadn't grown up at all in the past 6 months. If Kurisu was here, she'd make fun of me again. I could feel the rest of the audience staring at me coldly. It hurt. If I could have left, I would have wanted to. But I was too interested in hearing the rest of Dr. Leskinin's talk to move.
All right, everyone, moving on. But first, how about a round of applause for our brave audience member?
Oh, God.
Oh no. Please no.
Challengers like him are the ones who advance science and come up with the really amazing theories. He may become the third Einstein. By the way, the second Einstein is my little assistant here.
Stop messing around, Professor.
The audience chuckled. Sheesh.
Now then, I'm going to take a break from interpreting. The next interpreter is far better than I am. This is our second project, and the one we're putting most of our efforts towards. The Amadeus system. It's alter ego! Behold, Maho, finally, you are tall.
Amadeus is a reference to Amadeus Mozart. When she finished speaking, Maho walked to the back of the stage. At Dr. Leskinin's signal, the PC screen was displayed on the projector. And then I heard a voice.
Nice to meet you, everyone.
I love how it's Maho ? The murmuring got louder than before. But it felt more uncertain than surprised. On the screen, I could see a detailed 3D model of Maho, the girl who had just been interpreting.
By the way, this model was made by the famous DrinkWorks Studios. You've probably seen their movies.
Yajo Maho chimed in from the back of the stage.
The voice was done by a Japanese company, Yamana, using my voice samples.
This was CG? It sure looked real to me. The professor said something into the laptop's microphone, and the 3D model of Yajo Maho on the screen opened its mouth.
I'm Yajo Maho. To be precise, I'm a being based on the Yajo Maho, who existed 78 hours and 22 minutes ago.
If you listened carefully, you might have been able to hear something slightly off. But it sounded far more human than any artificial voice I've ever heard.
I've been listening to your questions. And I was wondering why the professor didn't introduce me earlier. I thought for a while that the professor has a bit of a mean streak in him. You've got that right.
The Hyajo Maho on the screen spoke with a slightly irritated expression, and the Hyajo Maho by the wall nodded in agreement. Dr. Leskinin simply smiled. What was going on here? What part of this was their biggest project? The rest of the audience didn't seem to have any more of a clue than I did.
Many of you are wondering whether it's possible to extract a human's memories as data, save them, and use them.
You're wondering if that's really something we can do. So I'll put this
Question to you.
If not, what am I? I am based off
Data that was extracted from Hyajo Maho's brain
78 hours.
hours and 23 minutes ago.
What did she just say? The professor said something else in rapid English and asked the Maho on the screen to translate it. But she, if she was the right word, hesitated and went silent. I looked at the real Maho, and she was responding exactly the same way.
Professor, is it alright if
I report that sexual harassment to the university?
Dr. Leskinin laughed cheerfully and responded to her. The conversation was in quick English, and over half the audience couldn't understand it. The real Maho sighed and took back the microphone.
Well, the professor, he told this Amadeus system, which is based off of my memories, to answer a question. It was, stuff like, how old was I when I stopped taking baths with my dad? Or when did I first fall in love? He said any of those questions should be answerable.
Oh, jeez. You don't have to translate anymore.
Would you stop that? It's embarrassing. I'm not answering any questions like that. And I'm definitely not telling you my credit card number. And I don't even remember what kind of pajamas I was wearing a week ago.
What was this? It was so natural, I couldn't tell at first, but this was something unbelievable, wasn't it? It felt very different than a typical AI. I could tell that much. It wasn't answering the questions it was given, and because they were embarrassing, was it programmed to respond like that to certain questions for the purposes of this demonstration? It was possible that's all it was, but if that conversation wasn't programmed in advance, the rest of the crowd seemed to reach the same conclusion I did, and then whispers started to turn into surprised murmur. Yeah, if it started taking questions from random people in the audience, that would be more impressive. You could still say they were plants in the audience, but still.
Listen, can you do something about this little troublemaker? I know what he's trying to do, but it's embarrassing.
The copy of Maho was complaining to the original. It felt like I was watching a pair of twin sisters talking.
Well, since the little troublemaker, that is Dr. Leskinin, is having too much fun to explain what's going on here, I will.
Maho walked back to the professor.
I think everyone's already figured this out, but Amadeus is deciding on its own what it can and can't talk about, and what it does and doesn't want to talk about. We haven't programmed any of this into her at all. It's using the memories we gave it to make its own autonomous decisions.
The Maho on screen suddenly took over for her.
And here's another thing, which is the exact opposite of the medical applications we discussed. The research team spends a lot of time arguing about this, but I eventually forget about unnecessary information. Or rather, I become unable to access those memories, just like all of you. For example, the color of the pajamas I wore a week ago. There's no reason I shouldn't know this, but right now I can't remember it. That's because this information isn't necessary to my survival. The same goes for all of you. So as you can see, Amadeus's memory inputs and outputs are very similar to a human's. This result surprised us too, and we're currently researching it, but we still don't know exactly how it works.
As Maho finished up, Dr. Leskinin took the microphone back. She resumed interpreting as he continued the lecture.
Another thing that surprised us is that Amadeus is capable of telling deliberate lies. By deliberate, I mean it lies of its own free will, not as the result of any programming error. Lies are one method that humans use to communicate with one another. And just like a human, Amadeus can use its memories to decide if lying would be best. If so, it will lie without hesitation.
Don't tell them that, Professor. I can't lie without hesitation. I have a conscience, you know?
I'm so sorry, and
Dr. Leskinin cut off. He seemed to be hesitating. Maho didn't seem especially surprised by this. Maybe he knew the reason. But the moment passed, and the professor continued. And Maho translated his words like there was nothing shocking about them at all.
as we continue our research, we eventually came to believe that it may be possible to give Amadeus a soul, just like a living human.
Now that's unnecessarily metaphysical.
Yeah, that's not very scientific.
I was stunned. A soul? Should one of the leading brain scientists in the world really be using a word with such a vague definition? This would mean the creation of true artificial intelligence. The whole hall got very quiet. And it was sheer chaos for a while after that, as everyone tried to debate their own personal theories with Dr. Leskinin at once.
This lab is too quiet. I think I'll add some music. Oh, the connection is faint, but still there. You can hear my call, despite your attempts to forget me, Okabe. I can still influence you. Mayhaps you are not a total loss. Perhaps you are worthy to meet her. It may get you back on track. We do have a world to save.